There are over 99 different ways a goblin speaks, but only one noise as generic as this one.
Hey gang, just to let you know, you can now use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, at flipsidegaming.com and originalmagicart.store. Using the code gets you 10% off orders $10 or more, and you get to help out the channel at the same time. Alrighty, we've got another game from Platinum Star Games coming your way. Today's game has me playing Erebos, keeping 2 Swamps, Decree of Pain, Grey Merchant of Asphodel, Deserted Temple, and Read the Bones. Dean, who's new to the channel and was nice enough to come out despite locking his keys in his car, is playing Michiko Konda. He keeps 2 Plains, Mass Calcify, Luminarch's Ascension, Cage Sun, Swords to Plowshares, and Sun Titan. Victor is playing his Jhoira deck, keeping Reliquary Tower, Mountain, 2 Islands, Codex Shredder, Diluvian Primordial, and Gilded Lotus. Lastly, Xander is playing his Maelstrom Wanderer deck, keeping a Hinterland Harbor, a Simic Growth Chamber, Glorybringer, Shivan Reef, an Island, and a Path of Ancestry. I win the die roll and start us off. I draw and I play a Swamp, passing. Xander plays a tap Path of Ancestry and passes to Dean. Dean plays a Plains and passes. Victor plays a Command Tower and he casts Codex Shredder. I play a Swamp and I pass. Xander plays a Shivan Reef, passing. Dean drops his second Plains and becomes the arch enemy of the game with a Luminarch's Ascension. Victor mills Dean for 1 with his Codex Shredder at the end of turn. Victor plays a Reliquary Tower, passing. I play a Swamp and I cast Read the Bones, scrying 1 to the bottom and then drawing 2 cards and losing 2 life. Xander plays a Reliquary Tower as well, and at the end of turn, Dean adds his 3rd counter to the Ascension. Oh goodness, what are we doing? Dean draws and has no lands for turn, passing. At the end of turn, Victor mills a Pearl Medallion off the top of Dean's library. Victor plays an island and passes to me. I play a High Market, which lets me cast Erebos in my main phase, and I pass to Xander. Xander plays a Gruul Turf, returning the Shivan Reef to his hand. At the end of turn, Dean makes an Angel with his Ascension. Dean draws and has to pass. At the end of turn, Victor forces Xander to mill the top card. Victor plays a Mountain and he casts Rhystic Study. I draw for turn, playing a Deserted Temple as my land. I cast a Charcoal Diamond, paying the 1 for the study, and I pass. Xander replays his Reef and takes 1 to cast a Glorybringer. He doesn't pay the 1, and Victor draws a card. Moving to combat, he extorts the Glorybringer as he swings it at Dean. He has the Glorybringer's ability to target the Angel, and responding to the trigger, Dean uses his swords to exile the dragon. His Angel still takes the 4 though, which has it dying, and we then move to Dean's turn. Dean plays a Spirit of the Labyrinth to help slow down Victor's commander and draw engines, and with the Spirit on the stack, I activate Erebos' ability to lose 2 life and draw a card. Dean can't pay the extra 1 though for the spell, and Victor draws from the spell being cast. Victor plays an island for his turn, and he casts an Ethereum Sculptor before passing to me. I play a Swamp, and I cast Magus of the Coffers in my main phase, paying the 1 extra. Xander plays a Forest, and uses Natural State to blow up the Rhystic Study, paying the 1 extra for it. He then drops a Thunderbreak Regent, revealing that his deck is actually a Temur Dragon tribal deck, and passes turn. Dean draws for turn, and he casts Enlightened Tutor in his main phase, and goes to find land tax, which he immediately cuts to in a stroke of luck. He puts it on top and passes. Victor plays a Mountain and brings out Jhoira in his main phase, and then passes to me. I untap and I play a Lake of the Dead, tapping my Swamp to float a black mana and then sacrificing it to the lake trigger. I then cast Chainer using the floating mana and 4 more lands, and I pass to Xander. Xander plays an island for his turn, and he casts Mind's Eye in his main phase, passing. Victor, feeling bad for Dean, decides not to mill Dean's land tax off the top and lets him draw it. Dean draws the land tax and casts it in a lightning fast speed, which Xander can only hope to replicate as he pays 1 to draw with the Mind's Eye. Dean then passes, and Victor mills Dean for 1 at the end of turn, flipping a Precious Plains into Dean's graveyard. Victor draws for turn, and Xander pays 1 to draw as well. Victor then plays an island, and needs only pay 4 to cast his Gilded Lotus. Sadly, he can't draw any extra cards from Jhoira's ability because the Spirit is still out. Victor then casts a Manic Scribe, forcing all of his opponents to mill 3 cards. He then passes, and at the end of turn, I draw a card with Erebos' ability and I lose 2 life. With the Rhystic Study gone, I'm free to cast a Thought Vessel and then Liliana of the Dark Realms without needing to pay the extra 1 each. I then uptick Liliana to find a swamp and I put it to my hand. I then play said swamp and I pass to Xander. Xander draws for turn and casts Burgeoning. He drops a Simic Growth Chamber and bounces a land back to his hand. We then see Savage Venmaw hit the field, and Xander hits Dean with a Thunderbreak Regent before passing to Dean. Dean's upkeep has his land tax easily meeting its requirements, and he goes to find 3 basic plains, putting them to his hand. He plays a plains which lets Xander play a forest, and Dean then casts Ghostly Prison and passes. At the end of turn, Victor mills Dean for 1. Victor plays a mountain as his land for turn, and he casts Altar of the Brood. He then casts a Diluvian Primordial, which lets him cast some spells for free after we mill 1. He decides to cast Dean's Enlightened Tutor, my Increasing Ambition, and Xander's Decimate. He resolves the Decimate first, blowing up Mind's Eye as the artifact, Spirit of the Labyrinth as the enchantment, Chainer as the creature, and My High Market as the land. He then tutors with the Ambition, and finally resolves the Enlightened Tutor to put a Keening Stone on top of his library. At the end of turn, I activate my Magus of the Coffers to generate 4 black mana, paying it into Erebos' ability to draw 2 cards and lose 4 life. I cast Soaring in my main phase, and I activate the Magus again. I use it to help cast Decree of Pain, which upon resolution lets me draw 7 lovely cards to my hand. I then drop a swamp and uptick Liliana to find another swamp and replace it in my hand. We then see an expedition map hitting the field, and I pass to Xander. Xander draws for turn, and we see a Maelstrom Wanderer hit the stack. He resolves his Cascades first, revealing a Belby's Portal and then a Kadama's Reach, which Xander casts to grab a forest for the field and a mountain to his hand. With the portal hitting the field, Xander names dragons. He then moves to combat, takes out Liliana of the Dark Realms, and passes to Dean. Dean grabs some more basics on his upkeep, and I crack my expedition map to also go and find a land from my library. Dean then draws for turn and he plays a plains, and Xander puts out a mountain to his Burgeoning trigger. I grab a Cabal Coffers, and Dean then casts Michiko Konda. At the end of turn, Victor has me mill a card with his Codex Shredder, and Dean represents his commitment to his Michiko deck with a dope fan he brought from home. Victor draws his Keening Stone, and he plays an island, forcing his opponents to mill 1. He casts a Keening Stone, and we all mill again. Victor then forces Xander to mill 1, and he activates the Keening Stone to mill Xander for another 12 before passing to me. I play Cabal Coffers in my main phase, and I cast Dark Ritual. I use the mana to help pay for Swiftfoot Boots, and I activate the Cabal Coffers for 5 black mana to help pay for Lord of the Void. I then slap the boots onto those Demon Tootsies, and before moving to combat, Xander activates his Belby's Portal to put out a Scourge of Valkis, dealing 1 to Victor as it enters. I swing the Lord at Xander, who blocks with the Scourge sadly, and I don't get to steal any dragons. My second main phase has me resolving a Nurkana Revenant, and I pass my turn. Xander plays a Hinterland Harbor and cycles a Sheltered Thicket. He then casts his own Soul Ring and hits Victor for 7 commander damage, passing. Dean plays a Plains, and Xander gets to drop a Mana Confluence. Dean then drops a Rule of Law, and no one is really happy about this except for Dean, as he passes turn. Victor plays an island, and we all mill 1. We then see a Steel Hellkite hit the field, and we all mill 1 more again. Victor then taps his Codex Shredder to mill my top card, and then activates his Keening Stone to mill me for a good 15 or more cards. For my turn, I play Bajuka Bog in my main phase, and I exile Xander's graveyard. Moving to combat, I hit Xander for 7 with my Lord of the Void, and he exiles the top 7 cards. There aren't that many great choices, and I steal an Animar from Xander, which isn't the worst though. I then resolve a Worst Fears, and I target Victor, taking control of his next turn. I then pass. Xander draws and plays a forest. He swings the Maelstrom Wanderer at Victor, who chumps with his Steel Hellkite. Both creatures die, and Xander passes to Dean. Dean grabs some more basic plains and puts them to his hand. He plays a Nykthos Shrine to Nyx as his land for turn, and activates it for 5 white mana. He then needs to only pay 1 more mana for Sun Titan, and with Sun Titan entering, Dean brings back and goes shields up when he brings True Believer to the field. I draw for Victor's turn, and I use the Codex Shredder on myself/Victor. I then use a Keening Stone on Victor as well, and then tap him out, passing to myself. I draw for turn, and I swing my Lord of the Void at Victor for 7. The demon connects, and Victor exiles his top 7. I grab and put Trophy Mage onto the field, which lets me go and tutor for Stratascythe, which I think is one of the very few 3-drop artifacts in my deck. I then cast a Grey Merchant of Asphodel in my main phase, and with my Devotion being 8, I drain my opponents for that much and gain 24. I then pass to Xander. Xander draws and casts Lightning Greaves in his main phase. He thinks about casting Maelstrom Wanderer, but with the Rule of Law out, it doesn't seem like a great idea, and he passes to Dean. Dean plays a Plains and moves to combat, swinging the Sun Titan at Victor for 6. Victor takes the hit, and Dean brings back out Aura of Silence with the Sun Titan on an attack trigger. Dean then sacrifices the Aura to blow up Keening Stone, and he puts Gift of Immortality onto Michiko in his second main phase, and passes. Victor plays a Seed of the Synod as his land for turn, and his opponents all mill 1 from the Altar trigger. We then see a Staff of Nin hit the field, and we all mill 1 more. I draw for turn and pay 7 to cast Sepulchral Primordial. I bring back Xander's Lathliss, Victor's Steel Hellkite, and Dean's Fiend Hunter. But I sadly miss the trigger from Lathliss seeing the Hellkite enter. I exile Dean's Sun Titan with his Fiend Hunter, and moving to combat, swing lethal at Victor. Before the damage is done though, Victor deals 1 to me with the staff, and mills me for 1 with his Codex Shredder. Xander goes for it hard in his main phase, casting the Maelstrom Wanderer. He cascades twice, but is unable to cast the spell sadly, and he puts them to the bottom. He then activates the portal, putting out an Archwing Dragon, and he moves to combat. Before moving to declare attackers, Dean activates his Nykthos to make a ton of white mana, and then activates the Ascension to make some angels. Xander then has to pay 4 to swing his 2 creatures at Dean, and Dean blocks each creature with 1 angel, trading with the dragon and chumping the Wanderer. Dean activates Nykthos in his main phase for 8 white mana, and uses some of it to cast Mass Calcify. He then uses the extra mana to make another angel, and moving to combat, hits me with 3 angels for 12 damage. I draw for turn, and I cast Necrotic Ooze, gearing the ooze up with my Swiftfoot Boots, and passing to Xander. Xander recasts Maelstrom once more, and cascades twice but can't resolve them again. Xander then activates the portal to put out Kaiga, and equips the dragon with Lightning Greaves. He then passes, and at the end of turn, Dean makes 2 more angels. Dean uses his land tax trigger on his upkeep once more, and he grabs some plains. He casts an Idyllic Tutor to go and find Divine Intervention, putting it to his hand. Moving to combat, he swings 3 angels at me, and 3 angels at Xander. Xander blocks one of them with Kaiga, taking 8 while I take 12. I draw for turn, and I cast Profane Command, where X is 9. Ideally, I'd want to blast Dean in the face for 9, but with the True Believer out, I can't. Instead, I bring back the Lord of the Void, and give up to 9 creatures fear until the end of my turn. I move the Swiftfoot Boots onto the demon, and I pass to Xander. Xander draws for turn, and he plays a Spire Garden as his land. He then passes to Dean, and Dean makes more angels at the end of turn. Dean activates Nykthos in his main phase to pay for Divine Intervention, although I don't think he'll need it. He then moves to combat, swinging 5 angels each at Xander and I. We each block 1, but still take 16 from the rest. This kills Xander, and Dean passes to me. I draw for turn, and I play a Swamp. I then go through my graveyard to try and find an answer, but with nothing in my hand or yard, pass. At the end of my turn, Dean makes another angel. Dean casts a Caged Sun in his main phase, and with more than enough damage from angels, I concede the game to him, and we move on. Game review time. So, there are some important lessons we should learn from today's game. The first being, even if an opponent is far behind early on, it doesn't mean they won't come back with a vengeance by mid-game. This was highlighted by Dean not having very much in the beginning, but as soon as he had his land tax going, he was basically going to win the game, it seemed like. We certainly overestimated the Luminarch Ascension, and leaving it alive and blowing up the Spirit of Labyrinth, while better for Victor, was worse for the table. I think my issue was unfortunately that I started to freak out a little bit once Victor started targeting me with Keening Stone. I had no way to shuffle my graveyard back into my library, and things were getting pretty grim with how much I was drawing and milling each time. As a result, I put most of my efforts towards killing Victor as opposed to killing Dean, who was probably the bigger threat anyway. Xander unfortunately seemed to suffer the most out of all of us, with all of Dean's effects really taxing him out. Being able to cascade into 2 free spells with Maelstrom Wanderer is always fantastic, but when you can't cast them because of rule of law, and then have to pay 2 mana per creature to attack with the Maelstrom Wanderer, things can quickly fall out of your reach. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.